Agyanam timirandasya Gyananjana salakaya. Can it be louder? Chaksurunmilitam yena tasmai Sri Gurave Namah. Gurave Gaurachandraya Radhikaya Tadalaya Krishnaya Krishna Bhakta Tadabhaktaya Namo Yam Pravrajata Manupetam Apeta Krityam Dvaipayana Virahaka Taruvaja Putriti Tantaya Taravo Nedus Tam Sarvadaya Munimanatusmi Bhaktya Vihina Aparada Lakshay Chiptasya Kamadi Tarangamadya Kripamai Tvam Sharanam Praparyam Vrinde Namaste Sharanarvindam Tavoivasmi Najivamitam Vina Iti Vigyaya Radhi Tam Nayamam Charanantike. First, I offer my unlimited obeisances in the dust of the lotus feet of my most worshipful Diksha Gurudev, Nityalila Pravishta Om Vishnu Pad, Astotara Sat Shri Srimad Srila Bhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada, and the same unlimited obeisances in the dust of the lotus feet of my most worshipful Shiksha Gurudev, Nityalila Pravishta Om Vishnu Pad, Astotara Sat Shri Srimad Srila Bhakti Vedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj, Srila Bhakti Vigyan Bharati Goswami Maharaj, all of our Gaudiya Guru Varga, and all the assembled devotees. So we are about to start the 5th chapter of first canto Srimad Bhagavatam. First, a whirlwind review. Because every day there's more to review, the review will be less detailed. So, first chapter, the sages, Vyasadeva opens by offering his obeisances to Sri Krishna, the Absolute Truth, who is the source of everything, the maintainer, the destroyer, conscious of everything directly and indirectly, puts everybody into illusion, first spoke to Brahma, the original poet and first created being. We also read from Srila Gurudev's deeper, and more deeper meanings of this verse from Secret Truths of the Bhagavatam, of course. And then the sages asked relevant questions about the world's welfare. In chapter 2, Sri Sukadeva Goswami offers his obeisances to his gurus. He glorifies the questions, and he begins to establish that devotional service, unmotivated, uninterrupted. Maybe, let's see, how would I face you all more without cutting off Rupa and Rati? Huh? But I'm not looking at any of you. I do want to do that. Can you move kind of forward? It'd be great. Okay, good. Yeah. More in the further. Great. All right. So then he discusses how unmotivated, uninterrupted service to the Lord as the only means to satisfy the self, and only inquiries about the Lord will satisfy the self. And how devotional service gets rid of the labyrinth knot, cuts the labyrinth knot of reactionary work, how it situates one in the mode of goodness, and how who to worship and who not to worship in terms of the Lord and the demigods. Then in chapter 3, he discusses, because one of the questions was, tell us about the magnanimous, magnificent activities of the Lord's incarnations. So chapter 3, called Krishna, the source of all incarnations, talks about the Purusha avatars, then the various incarnations according to chronology, from fish to tortoise to lion, and so on, discussing Narada, Vamadev, Parsuram, and so many others. And then establishing that in the 28th millennium of the Vaivasvata Manu, there are 13 Manu emperors in every day of Brahma, which is each one reigns for trillions of years. We can't imagine that. Krishna himself appears along with Balaram as the 19th and 20th incarnation, just preceding Sri Vyasadeva, the incarnation of the Lord who manifested the literary incarnation of the Lord, Srimad Bhagavatam. And so, masked as a human being, he performs wonderful activities. Krishna Stu Bhagavan Swayam. There are so many incarnations, just like rivulets in a river, but he's the origin of all. And where does religion and knowledge take shelter now that Krishna's gone back to his own abode? In Srimad Bhagavatam. Then, because the sages inquired, since they're hearing the glories of devotional service and the glories of the Bhagavatam in relation to giving that devotional service, they start asking in the 4th chapter, so how did this all begin? How did it happen that Parikshit Maharaj heard the Srimad Bhagavatam from Sukadeva Goswami? Why did he give up his kingly position? He was honored all over the world, and just come to the bank of the Ganges and fast for 7 days till death, which inspired Sukadeva Goswami to come and recite Bhagavatam to him. But before that, how is it that Vyasadeva decided to write the Srimad Bhagavatam? So chapter 4 is all about Sri Vyasadeva living in the Badarik ashram in the Himalayas. And he was meditating in trance, and he saw that now that Kali Yuga is beginning, he saw the anomalies that people's activities are going to start being very immoral, very degraded. Their lifespan is going to go down. And he compiled so many Vedic literatures. The one Veda that was existing at that time was too terse, too complex, too closed for the people in general to understand. So he divided the Veda into 4, and then so many subdivisions. He gave those divisions for the teaching of his disciples to the world. Then he wrote the histories and the Puranas and the Mahabharata for the less intelligent classes of men, which now that Kali Yuga was coming, everybody pretty much was less intelligent. For those Sutra Sambhava, everyone's a Sutra in Sage Kali. And purificatory rituals were going to be stopped, and so even if somebody was a Brahmana, there was no surety that his offspring would be brahmanas. And so everybody was giving birth to low offspring, which creates havoc in the world. So he did all that, but still he wasn't satisfied. He wasn't quite sure why he wasn't satisfied. He knew there was something that in his writings that was bereft of the right kind of devotional service for the living beings. And just as he was lamenting, his Gurudev appeared to him. Because when we really need Guru, that's when Guru comes. And he offered Narada a seat. And Vyasadeva, his whole life is nothing but compassion. And still he wasn't satisfied. And he's an incarnation, and still he wasn't satisfied. So how dissatisfied will we be? And we have so many selfish interests. And we're just tiny living entities. So we definitely need the presence of Guru. So when Narada arrived, Vyasadeva got up and offered respects. And now in chapter 5, Narada will begin instructing Vyasadeva, culminating in his inspiring him to write Srimad Bhagavatam. This chapter is called Narada's Instructions on Srimad Bhagavatam for Vyasadeva. Sutu Vacha. So now Vyasadeva wrote the Srimad Bhagavatam. Now this is, within that, Vyasadeva is saying how Sutta Goswami is speaking to the sages and answer to their questions. If anything is unclear, you're welcome to interrupt. Sutu Vacha Tatam Sukumasina Upasina Hachchava Devarshi Praviparsim Vina Parisayamiva. Sutta Goswami said, thus the sage amongst the gods, Narada, comfortably seated and apparently smiling, addressed the rishi amongst the brahmanas, Vyasadeva. Naradu vacha parasarya mahabhaga bhavata kachilatmanam parityusyati sarira atma manasa eva. Addressing Vyasadeva, the son of Parasara, Narada inquired, are you satisfied by identifying with the body or the mind as the objects of self-realization? So in the purport, I'm not going to generally read the purport, as you know, but here I want to bring to light. Prabhupada writes, this was a hint by Narada to Vyasadeva regarding the cause of his despondency. He was a descendant of Parasara, the greatly powerful sage, and he had the privilege of great parentage, which should have given him no cause for despondency. He should not identify himself with the body or the mind. Actually, he didn't. Narada is just bringing out what we need to be free from. One cannot be cheerful by nature unless one is factually seated in self-realization. Narada is going to be giving the opportunity for the highest self-realization of all beings. Jigyasitam susum spanam apite madaditam kritavan paratam jastam sarvartha paribranitam. No doubt your inquiries are full of your studies, and your studies also well fulfilled, since you have prepared a great and wonderful work, the Mahabharata, which is full of all kinds of Vedic sequences, elaborately explained. Jigyasitam avitam cha brahma yata sanatana tatapi sochapamanam akritartha ivabhava. You have fully delineated the subject of impersonal Brahman, as well as the knowledge derived thereof. Why should you be despondent in spite of all this, thinking that you are undone, my dear Prabhu? He's acknowledging that Vyasadeva is full of all knowledge and realization. Now Vyasadeva is replying, Vyas uvacha astyeva me sarvavidam yoktam tatapi nadvam syute me tanulamavyakta akara bodham prichamahe tvatma bhatmabhutam. Shri Vyas said, all you have said about me is perfectly correct. Despite all this, I'm not pacified. I therefore question you about the root cause of my dissatisfaction. For you're a man of unlimited knowledge, due to your being the offspring of Brahma, who is self-born, without mundane father and mother. He's not exactly self-born because he was born from the lotus flower that came from the navel lake of Lord Vishnu. But it meant that he had no mundane father and mother. Savai Bhavan Veda Samasta Guhyam Apashito Purusha Purana Puraspade Somanasaiva Vishwa Shiyati Guna Rasanga. My Lord, everything that is mysterious is known to you because you worship the creator and destroyer of the material world and the maintainer of the spiritual world, the original personality of Godhead, who is transcendental to the three modes of nature. Pamparyatamaga iha trilokim antas charovayar matmashakshi puravare brahmane dharmato vithai snatyasya me nunanam. Like the sun, your goodness can travel everywhere in the three worlds. And like the air, you can penetrate the inner region. So this applies to all bona fide self-realized gurus. Like the sun, your goodness can travel everywhere in the three worlds. And like the air, you can penetrate the internal region. You know what everybody's thinking. You know what their future is going to be. You know what they're going to be thinking before they think it. You can penetrate the inner region of everyone. As such, you're as good as the all-pervading supersoul. Please, therefore, find out the deficiency in me, despite my being absorbed in transcendence under disciplinary regulations and vows. Shinarada uvacha bhavatanudita prayam jasho bhavato malan yenaiva saunutusyeta manyeta darshanam kila. Shinarada said, you have not actually broadcast, here's the thing, you've not actually broadcast the sublime and spotless glories of the personality of Godhead. That philosophy, which does not satisfy the transcendental senses of the Lord, is considered worthless. Padharmadayascarta moni kirtita yatatatavas vasudevasya mahimahyanvarnita. Although great sage, you have very, very broadly described the four principles beginning with religious performances. You have not described to such an extent the glories of the Supreme Personality, Vasudeva. Nayad vachas chitra, nayad vachas chittapadam hare yaso, jagat pavitram pavanita heart of chit, Tadvaya samtirtam shanti manasa nayatraham sanyimantyushikaya. Those words which do not describe the glories of the Lord, who alone can sanctify the atmosphere of the whole universe, are considered a very important verse, considered by saintly persons to be like the place of pilgrimage for crows. Any other book other than bona fide Vedic literatures are considered the place of pilgrimage for crows. You see anybody reading a book, you're just in your mind, imagine a crow reading a book made of garbage. Because that's where crows settle in garbage places, where the swans settle in by the mangroves. So books about health, Haridas Prabhu is asking. Anything that will be favorable for bhakti is okay. Their ambition could have been, and most likely would have been, so that people will be able to be happy in sense gratification. And those who read with that motive to get healthy for sense gratification are crows. And for them, the same books are garbage. But those books that are read for the purpose, the same books that are read for the purpose of serving the Lord, they are considered favorable activities. Because in the Bhagavatam, it's stated that one should desire to live a healthy life only because the human form of life enables one to inquire about the absolute truth. Yes, that's right. Second canto, second chapter of first canto, one of the verses that we read. So since the all-perfect persons are inhabitants of the transcendental abode, they do not derive any pleasure there. So even books on health cannot be fully absorbed in them unless you're preparing to be a doctor, like Bhakti Manjari here, and will use that job to maintain herself for giving her facility to preach and do sadhana bhakti. Is that correct? In which case, that reading and study is favorable. Now, this is an extremely important verse. Tadvad visargo janitagyo viplavo jasmin prati slokam padavaktyapi namanyanantasya yaso nikrantitya shrinvanti gayanti grananti sarava. On the other hand, that literature, which is full of descriptions of the transcendental glories of the name, form, fame, forms, pastimes, etc., of the unlimited Supreme Lord, is a different creation, full of transcendental words, directed towards bringing about a revolution in the impious lives of the misdirected civilization. Such transcendental literatures, even if imperfectly composed, are heard like if the editing's not good. The English is not good, are heard, sung, and accepted by purified men who are thoroughly honest. In the purport, I'll read the purport because Very important. Just as the verse is important. What did the verse say? On the other hand, that literature, which is full of the descriptions of the name, fame, form, pastimes, etc. of the Supreme Lord, he's speaking about Krishna, the original personality, Krishna, is another creation entirely. It brings about a revolution in the impious lives of the misdirected civilization. And even if there's something wrong with the grammar or something, then still those who are thoroughly honest, they will always read, hear, and remember such a scripture. So it's the qualification of great thinkers to pick up the best, even from the worst. Intelligent men pick up nectar from a stock of poison, gold from a filthy place, a good and qualified wife from an obscure family, and a good lesson from a teacher who comes from the untouchables. These are some of the ethical instructions for everyone in every place without exception. But a saint is far above the level of ordinary man. He's always absorbed in glorifying the Lord, because by broadcasting the holy name and fame of the Supreme Lord, the polluted atmosphere of the world will change. And as a result of propagating the transcendental literatures like Bhagavatam, people will become sane in their transactions. So you can always say that when you're distributing books. It will turn insane society into sane transactions. In one place, I forget where, some purport, Prabhupada writes that in the absence of a good government, Srimad Bhagavatam is the substitute. While preparing this commentation on this particular stanza of Srimad Bhagavatam, we have a crisis before us. Our neighboring friend China has attacked the border of India with a militaristic spirit. We have practically no business in the political field, yet we see that previously China and India both lived peacefully together for centuries. So why? The reason is that they lived in those days in the atmosphere of God consciousness, pure-hearted and simple. No cause for quarrel. And now they're quarreling over, get this, an uninhabitable piece of land between the two countries. Insane. This is all due to the age of Kali, which is the age of quarrel and hypocrisy. And what else is it due to? It wasn't obviously due to the issue in question, but to the polluted atmosphere of this age. Systematically, there is propaganda by a section of people to stop the glorification of the name and fame of the Supreme Lord. Therefore, there's a need of disseminating the message of the Bhagavatam. So I hope that tomorrow, Saturday, you'll also, I know there's a program in the late afternoon at 3:30 to 7. Then after that, there's Harinam, which is an opportunity to distribute books as well. And before that, starting at 10 in the morning, there is the Coconut Grove Farmers Market, which you're all invited to participate in preaching and distributing books. And Harinam, right there at your booth. So therefore, there's a great need for disseminating the message of Bhagavatam all over the world. It's the duty of every responsible Indian, he hasn't come to America yet, to broadcast the message. Another place he says it's a duty of every leader of the country to broadcast the message. Because India has failed in her duty and neglected this responsible work, therefore there's so much quarrel and trouble in the world. Well, here's what he said. So we are confident that if the transcendental message of the Bhagavatam is received only by the leading men of the world. Certainly there will be a change of heart, and naturally the people in general will follow them. We're going to the next verse. Text 12. Nice karm, mimapi achita bhava Nashobhate Jnanam Niranjanam Tapuna Shashvara Vajra Vispare Nacharpitam Karnapya Karanam. Knowledge of self-realization, even though free from material affinity, does not look well if it's devoid of the conception of the infallible God. What then is the use of fruitive activities which are naturally painful from the very beginning and transient by nature if they are not utilized for the devotional service of the Lord? Like studying Chinese medicine would be painful from the beginning and transient by nature unless it's utilized in the devotional service of the Lord, which Bhakti is doing. That is even so-called self-realization, like impersonal Brahman, or I'm not the body, but without a conception of the Lord, personal conception, which includes his pastimes, etc., it's all useless. Doesn't look well. Narada is speaking. 13. Ato Mahabharabhavim Amogajrik Suchi Shava Sacho Todrita Vrita Rukramasya Kila Bandhamurtase Samadhinam Smantad Vichestitam. O Vyastev, your vision is completely perfect. Your good fame is spotless. You are firm in your vow and situated in truthfulness. And thus you can think of the pastimes of the Lord in trance for liberation of the people in general. Well, how, if Vyasdev's in trance and thinking of the pastimes of the Lord, how is that for the people in general? To free them from material bondage. Because he's going to write down what's in his trance. Atonyata kinshana yadvibhaktata pratagdritastad rupanamabi nakarachit kwapi chadustitamadir labedavata. No. Whatever you desire to describe that is separate from the vision of the Lord simply reacts with different forms and names to, what does it do? It agitates the mind. Anything that you talk about that's different from the vision of the Lord do nothing but agitate the mind. It promises happiness, but it only agitates. Just like the donkey who's carrying the big heavy load in Mathura of a ton of bricks, and the owner puts a carrot 2 inches in front of his nose, and there's the promise, in the next step you're going to get that carrot, but it never comes. Rather, he just gets beaten by the owner for not going fast enough. As the wind agitates a boat that has no resting place, the only resting place is who? Patir Bharata Prabhu Shakshi Nivasam Sharanam Sarit. Krishna is the best friend. He's the Sharanam, the shelter. He's the Nivasam, he's the refuge. He's the master, he's the goal. He's the sustainer. We'll read that again. Whatever you desire to describe, that means any prajalpi you want to do, that is separate from the vision of the Lord, simply reacts with different forms and names to agitate the mind, as the wind agitates a boat which has no resting place. Yugupsitam dharma kritenu sat tata swabhavarat tasya mahan yata krama yadyakto dharma ita iti tarastito namanyate tasya maranam jana. People in general are naturally inclined to enjoy, and you have encouraged them in that way in the name of religion. This is verily condemned and is quite unreasonable. Because they are guided under your instructions, they will accept such activities in the name of religion and will hardly care for prohibitions. Let's see what he's talking about. So, the Vyasadev's compilation of different Vedic literatures on the basis of regular performances of fruitive activities. So, part of the Vedas talks about fruitive activities, pious activities so that you can enjoy a better life, pious activities so that you can go to heaven. It's condemned by Narada. And even the fruitive activities are depicted in parts of the Mahabharata. But of course, within Mahabharata is the essence, which is the Bhagavad Gita. So the human beings, by long material association, life after life, have a natural inclination anyway to enjoy and overlord material nature. But this human life is so rare. It's a chance to go back to home, back to Godhead, after transmigrating through 8,400,000 species of life, even as plum trees. So we're imprisoned. And so he's telling him to write. Other Vedic literatures has spots. They have a lot of good things, but they also have spots. Therefore, the Srimad Bhagavatam is called Amalama Purana. It's the spotless Purana. No mala, no dirty spots. Amalam. Even parts of the Vedas talk about eating meat under certain circumstances, like once a month, a dark moon night. Then you whisper to the animal, I'm eating you now, you can eat me in the future. So some mixed things. But you have to do that for those in the various modes of nature. So there are Puranas for those in the mode of ignorance, passion, and now he's encouraging him to write a Purana in the mode of pure goodness, no spot. A patient suffering from a particular type of malady is almost always inclined to accept eatables which are forbidden for him. The expert physician does not make any compromise with the patient by allowing him to take partially what he should not take at all. So the Vedas, some of the Vedas are mixed, various degrees of mixture. Bhagavad Gita has also said that a man attached to fruit of work should not be discouraged from his occupation, but gradually he may be elevated to the position of self-realization. Like if I tell you, I'll give an example. In one of Gurudev's Harikatha festivals in England, some devotees were selling Gurudev shirts, like Jai Gurudev, and then there's this picture. And so I complained to somebody that's not bona fide because people throw them in the washing machine and iron them. And, if Gurudev is not different from this picture, then not nice to do that. So what I said got back to the people who were selling, and they complained to Gurudev. Gurudev called me, and sounds more like Holland, one or the other. And so Gurudev called me and he said, you're thinking that if they give up that activity, they'll move up to the next rung. But not necessarily, they might move down to the next rung. They're just discouraged because they want to use the money, after all, in my preaching. Then he quoted this Bhagavad Gita verse that is under reference here. Krishna says, don't discourage the minds of the materialists. Rather, give them something positive to do, devotional service. And then gradually they'll get purified and will automatically give up the lower activities. I mean, unless you have the power to discourage them. In other words, unless that particular person will change, then of course discourage them. Okay, so text 16. Vichakshanos syarhati veditam vapur anantaparasya vittasukham vartamanasya gunaramanas tato bhavantarshatistam vibhu. The Supreme Lord is unlimited. Only a very expert personality, retired from the activities of material happiness, deserves to understand this knowledge of spiritual values. Therefore, those who are not so well situated due to material attachment should be shown the ways of transcendental realization by your goodness through descriptions of the transcendental activities of the Lord. So it's good for everyone. Like in the beginning of Krishna book, Prabhupada writes, if you're a gross materialist, if you want to get liberated, if you already are liberated, wherever you are, you'll enjoy this Krishna book and it'll help you. Because it's about the Lord's pastimes. So even if you think that Radha and Krishna are material at the beginning, still read this and you'll get gradually purified. Another important verse, text 17. Jatva swadharmam charanam bhujam hare vajam bhaktatato yadi traku vyabhadrama buddha kovarta vajitam swadharmata. One who has forsaken his material occupations to engage in the devotional service of the Lord may sometimes fall down while in an immature stage. Yet, there is no danger of his being unsuccessful. In the beginning, like even there's one verse where Krishna is saying, I think it's the 11th canto, Krishna is saying that a person who's on the path of transcendence, he knows that certain activities are bad for him, will hurt his bhakti, but he can't help it. I know this is bad for me, I'm still doing it anyway. So what to do? Lament and continue your bhakti. And gradually again, the higher taste will come. But there's no danger of being unsuccessful. On the other hand, a non-devotee, though fully engaged in occupational duties, he's doing everything right. He doesn't fall down from them, gets to work exactly on time. He does not gain anything. Again, one who has forsaken his material occupations to engage in the devotional service of the Lord, even if he falls down due to past habits, pushings, there's no loss for him. He's still assured of success. Whereas a person who's fully successful in his material occupations, he doesn't gain anything. He starts from zero in his next life.
Doesn't fall, he's self-realized.
I'm sorry?
A person who never falls.
Once he's self-realized, he never falls. But until that time, he may. Does that answer your question? No? Self-realized means liberated, means muktir hitva anyatarupa. Svarupena Vyavastiti. You see the Lord's form, you see your own form, and you realize your relationship, and you're engaged in pure devotional service. Hope. Yes. All right, so Haridas Prabhu is asking, he has a material job. So he's saying that means he hasn't forsaken his material occupations. Is he still eligible to be doing devotional service at this very time? Is that the question? Yeah. Depends on the motive for doing the devotional material occupation. If we are mixed, then mixed, I want to enjoy the money, I want to enjoy comfort, and I want to have a place so that I can do my sadhana bhakti and serve. So that's mixed. So he can do mixed devotional service. And gradually, by doing mixed devotional service and good association and hearing from pure devotees, like we're not hearing from me, we're hearing from Srila Prabhupada and Srila Gurudev, then, of course, if you had them sitting directly in front of you, that would be a different thing in addition. Therefore, we pray at the beginning, "Oh Prabhu, you're not a book, you're Prabhupada yourself, you're Vyasadeva yourself, you're Narada yourself, there's Sukadeva Goswami, you're Sukadeva Goswami yourself. Please, all of you, be merciful unto us and make us realize what we're hearing directly from you as we sit at your lotus feet, and you're speaking directly to us, so that we could be free from all material desires and ultimately come out as Dasi of Radharani." So, yes, to the proportion that we're free from material motivation in our activities, to that proportion we can engage in pure service. Does that make sense? So you need a place to chant, you need a place to cook, and you have a special diet, so you can't just come and take prasadam at the temple all the time, right? And you need to be regulated, and you need to have a base from where you can come to the temple and engage in devotional services in the temple and out in the public arena to help others. So therefore, until we're fully surrendered, and then Krishna just takes care of us, we don't have to do anything. Until that time, we have to do something. In the first lecture that we printed in as the first chapter of Journey of the Soul, Gurudev is saying, just make an experiment. Stop everything and just chant for 7 days and see how Krishna takes care of you. You were going to say something? Of course, lamenting, repenting, as I see myself falling on banana peels every step I take. Certainly. And stay in good association. Because we're influenced by our association. Just like a crystal stone reflects anything that's near it. So we're also affected by our association. You associate with drunkards, you probably will become one. You associate with people who speak gossip, you end up doing that. Yasyaiva heto prayate takovito na labhyate yadpamutam paryada la labhyate dukavad anyata sukam kalena sa. Persons who are actually intelligent and philosophically inclined, should endeavor only for that purposeful end, which is not obtainable even by wandering to the topmost planet, Brahmaloka, down to the lowest planet. Anything else other than pure devotional service I can get from the highest planet down to the lowest. So Narada is telling Vyasadeva, telling us through Vyasadeva, that if somebody wants to be philosophically inclined and intelligent, then best to endeavor for that object which is not obtainable by anything, wandering anywhere in the three worlds, even up to Brahmaloka. As far as happiness derived from sense enjoyment is concerned, it can be obtained automatically in the course of time. Whatever our karma is, to enjoy or suffer, that's what we'll get, no matter how hard we work materially. Just as in the course of time, we attain miseries, even though we do not desire them. So if I'm having a misery, I can think, oh, good, that means this one's getting over, and then something else will be coming on the way. And if I'm having an enjoyment, then I can think, oh, something ahead. Or Premanande, Hari Hari Ho, Vanshikobutu Yashakavisnudevacha, Atitanam Pavanebhyo, Vaishnavebhyo, Namo Namo.